think we got a base for what we're doing, and that's what we tried to get. There's still some things to work out. There's still some timing details to work out. But, this has been a long process for these guys. As a new head coach, you get an extra week and an extra mini camp, which in reality turns into 2 weeks. So I've been most impressed with how these guys have kept their head down and just worked, because it does get redundant after a while, because you're going back and making sure that you're getting done what you wanted to get done, which is having a base for the offense, the base for the defense, and a base for special teams, because there's no game planning. So the excitement kind of wears off. So these guys have been doing a good job of pushing through and continuing to get ready for training camp. And essentially all we want to do is prepare everybody to compete in training camp. The identity of the team, I hope, falls in line of what I want to see out of our team. And I want to be the most physical team on the field. All right. I want to play great defense. I want to move the ball, and I want to be great in special teams. All right. So that kind of sums it up. Now, in saying all that, these guys have to decide what they want their identity to be. I know what we're going to push and press for, and the identity is going to be of knowing what to do, knowing when to do it, knowing how to do it, and everything we do it physically.
Well, you talk about being impressed, Jeff, and I'm impressed in how quick he's picked up learning how to handle the media and his poise in the press conference. Here's a guy that my guess is, although the NFL has assistant coaches or coordinators, mandatory once-a-week press conferences, I don't think he's ever been in one. And yet, in the last 2 months, I think he's picked it up pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, because the first half of the season last year, we didn't speak. I think we spoke to him one time,
right.
And then it was just once a week for the last half of the year when he was offensive coordinator.
Right.
And I do remember a couple of his comments, actually, and he was pretty smooth even then. He said, we're going to run the wishbone on the Thursday, I think, before they played. I think it was the Falcons. And we all laughed.
And he did.
Because he was from, he played at Alabama.
Right.
So, and so they did the wishbone. And the next Thursday, I said, I told you guys.
You weren't listening.
Right. And he does.
But you think of him from the Deep South, and you figure, maybe he doesn't talk as fast as Northerners do, but he's picked up the pace pretty well. And I think I really think he's a smart guy.
I think he is. And when you're trying to transcribe him, if he wants that Southern slowness, hey, that's
right.
fine. So
whoop-de-hell.
Right. Yeah, that was there's got to be
that could be the crying
T-shirts.
Yeah, that could be the rallying cry.
Yeah.
For
so
that.
I'm impressed by the way he handles.
All right.
us.
So he talked about the identity of the team, and he said some pretty sharp things there. What's the strength and weakness? And if you have a weakness, do you try to solve that, or do you just go around that? What do you do?
Well, you probably try to disguise it a little bit.
Okay.
And I'm still not big on the linebackers on this team. And I'm telling you, Les, I really I think that it's fair to say there are question marks on the offensive line because
well, you know who three of them are.
Right, and yes, but left tackle Greg Robinson, they only gave up 5 sacks, but he had 10 holding penalties in those 8 games he had.
Would you rather have a holding penalty or a sack?
Well, sure, you'd rather have the holding penalty, but and then I think it was Freddie Kitchens who just told us last week that fewer than 20% of the time a team in a 2-minute drive scores if there's a holding penalty. So
or a sack.
Or a sack.
Loss of yardage.
Yeah.
That was pretty interesting.
Maybe he said a sack. And
well, that's where analytics come in.
Right. And so I think Greg Robinson has to really clean that part of it up. And
the rest of the line, they shipped one out.
Right. And I mean, I'm not saying that was a good trade, probably trading Kevin-Zeitler, the right guard, for Olivier-Vernon.
Right.
But you really gave up something to get something, and
you hope.
Pardon?
You hope.
Yes. Well, yes, you hope. You gave up something, and
that's very true.
And so we'll see. But I'm going to give John-Dorsey he certainly knows a lot more about it than I do.
Yeah.
So I'm going to assume that he made the right move.
All right, so you talked about the weaknesses. What about the strengths?
Well, I think that defensive line, there's some depth, too, on that line. So that's going to be a big plus. And I think when you look at where this team was at wide receiver just a couple years ago, when Sashi Brown drafted 4 guys and only Rashard Higgins is probably still even in the NFL, to where they are now, with Higgins is still here, Landry, Beckham. They have some Damon Ratley, a draft pick last year, Derek Willis, who I thought looked pretty good until he then, unfortunately for him, he was injured almost, I think, like 3 days after being activated.
Right.
He hurt his collarbone in training camp. So I think some good, and Antonio Callaway.
If I recall, he caught a pass and everybody said, "Who's that guy?"
Yeah, but he's a tall guy and strong and smart guy when we talked to him, so he could pick on it quick. And so you had Antonio Callaway to that mix. Again, I think the challenge is going to be keeping everybody happy.
Yeah, not only keeping happy though, but you also keep the defense on their toes, trying to spend extra time figuring out who to concentrate on.
Right, and that's exactly right. And so, and you could spread them out like that. You're going to think about that. You have Beckham, Landry, Callaway, and we'll just say Higgins.
Yeah, and how about Duke Johnson coming out of the backfield?
Yeah, and so yeah, you better. That's going to keep some defensive coordinators up at night.
I would think.